Texas MLS Podcast. Q Cool and the gang. It's celebrate good times for all three Texas teams. FC Dallas in the playoffs. In the 3 seed, Austin FC in the playoffs. In the 2 seed, the Houston Dynamo. It's over, Victor Ariza. You don't have to worry anymore. Everything is done. You're into offseason World Cup coverage, and you'll help us a little bit on the playoffs, I know. But we're going to get into all three teams' games from Decision Day from yesterday as we're speaking. We're also going to look ahead to the playoff games for the 2 Texas teams. And, Victor, we can talk a little bit to you about the offseason.
There we go. That's our playoffs here in Houston. It's the offseason.
It has been for the last several years. We'll talk about the ways that the Dynamo might be able to turn that around. To be honest, probably focus a little bit more on Dallas and Austin today. Let's start in Dallas. We'll get to Austin, Chris Bills in a minute. But Dallas with, I think, kind of the most significant result for any team in Texas. Austin FC already had sewed up their number 2 seed. Houston already we knew was not going to be in the playoffs, although they helped FC Dallas out by playing spoiler last week, as we talked about last week with that win over Nashville FC. FC Dallas went into this game against Sporting Kansas City knowing all it needed to do was get a draw, 1 point. And yet I think from the very start of the game, Chris, you could see that the idea was to win the game. You know, I think managers, especially when they go on the road in MLS, they're always saying, oh, we're going to go for 3 points. And then sometimes you see formations, tactics, changes that sort of make that statement a little questionable. But no doubt about it, FC Dallas is going for the victory. It looked like it was going to come off early because they get the ball in the back of the net in minute 7, I believe. VAR says, you need to take a look at that. It's offside. Then Sebastian Lletget scores his debut goal for FC Dallas. Going to write more about him on the Striker this week, about how his veteran experience could be quite helpful to FCD as the playoff time comes, and just the fact that he's playing really well for this team. FC Dallas concedes. Sporting Kansas City had been one of the hottest teams in MLS since August 1st. They really closed out strong, kind of being eliminated from the playoffs seemed to fuel them. But Peter Vermees, his squads are going to have fight, and they did. Graham Zusi finds an equalizer through traffic. But FCD is ultimately able to get the winner through Paul Arriola. And Chris, one thing that I think is great news for FCD is not only did they get the win, not only do they lock up the 3 seed to get the home game, not only are they playing a Minnesota United team that I said would be the dream opponent just a few weeks ago on this podcast, they also got Alan Velasco back healthy. He sets up Paul Arriola for the goal. And it definitely seems like it's kind of all systems go for FCD as they hit the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you want. Is, you say you're going for the win. I think that it's even more important this time of year. You're doing it against a team that, like you said, even though Sporting Kansas City is sort of in that position of almost like Houston, it's like they don't have anything to play for. Season's over. They've been on a high since they got William Agata, in the squad. And it was, I think, with Graham Zusi equalizing, FC Dallas needed to respond, and they did. And, it's the stars that are getting it done. I think that all those boxes that you want to tick in your last game before the playoffs start, I think they've ticked, and now it's time to.
There was one they didn't tick.
He's got one.
There's one they didn't tick. Jesus Ferreira ended the season tied for the best goal-scoring season for FC Dallas. They clearly wanted to get him the goal. They clearly wanted, it wasn't like a NBA All-Star game kind of thing where guys are just passing around trying to get the guy who's retiring his shots or whatever. Right. But, there's Franco Jara comes into the game late, and usually he comes in for the other 9, Jesus Ferreira, and he comes in for Paul Arriola, and, guys are kind of looking, seeing, is Jesus making a run, and they wanted to get him to 19. It doesn't happen. It's fine. It's still perhaps the best, with no penalties. Jesus Ferreira scored 18 goals. It's maybe the best regular season ever. Chris Bills, if you're listening to the podcast, Chris Bills is looking around frantically because it sounds like perhaps the ice cream man is outside at 10 a.m. What's going on, Chris?
No, we got some lawnmowers going on.
It's lawnmowers. It sounded quite musical. It sounded quite musical. But so FC Dallas, not only do they close the season with Jesus Ferreira having one of the best attacking seasons for the club ever, they get Alan Velasco back healthy. Facundo Quignon, other guys who had been, maybe getting sporadic minutes, got time, I think should be ready for the playoffs. They also do it as the best defensive team in the West. A remarkable turnaround, Victor, from last year when we saw them concede basically against anyone who wanted them to concede. It was a rough defense. We saw a big transformation here in Houston, and we'll get to Austin's transformation in Dallas. We'll get to Austin's transformation as well. But what's the view from Houston? FC Dallas doubles their win total from last year. They win 14 after winning 7 last season, and they get 20 more points in this tournament. It's a confluence of factors because Nico Estevez comes in and does a great job as a manager, but he also had the assistance of Paul Arriola, record signing Alan Velasco, and then this Leggett trade during the season that I think kind of gave FCD that push that maybe means yesterday wasn't that nervous, right? Because if you don't make that move, you're probably still sitting 5th, 6th, hoping that you get a home playoff game into 4th. But I do think that they made a move that made them better.
Yeah, and in Houston, it's a bit of disappointment, right? Because had Houston won on decision day, it might have been the LA Galaxy coming into to FC Dallas on that first playoff game, and that would have maybe been a tougher opponent, I think, than Minnesota, right? You said the desired opponent was probably Minnesota, but yeah, I think that's an example, right? I know throughout the season, we've talked about this. Austin's maybe been looked at, or was, for Paulo Nagamura at the time, or look at Austin, in season 2 under Josh Wolf, etc. But I think, Dallas is the example. One coaching change can change the perspective of a team. And granted, Alan Velasco is a big signing. That don't take anything away. But Houston made a big money signing as well with Sebastian Ferreira. And in this case, really the coaching change. Nico Estevez has been the difference.
I think the other difference has been, and I'll write about this week on the Striker so subscribers can kind of get a deeper perspective from the players themselves. I asked Sebastian Leggett, I'm like, listen, man, is it just a media thing that we talk about, like, experienced players in the locker room? Because I know those guys are not having these long, 2-hour meetings with young players being like, the playoffs are very important. Like, that's not a real thing. But he's like, listen, I have to lead by my example. I pick times where I say things to the younger guys. And I think the guys are going to be asking him questions and Paul Arriola questions. And FC Dallas has had MLS experience, but last season they were the only team in the league who had no other player without MLS experience on a single other club. So FC Dallas had experienced players like Matt Hedges, Ryan Hollingshead was on the roster last year. Even some of the younger guys like Jesus Ferreira, Paxton Pomoko clearly know what it means to play for FC Dallas and to win an MLS as an FC Dallas player. But I think that experience from outside the locker room, and I think, Chris, you saw this in Austin this year too, that sort of know-how of winning in the league, I think it's more relevant than ever in the playoffs. And Leggett, a guy who has been close but never won MLS Cup, Arriola in the same situation, I think these guys are going to be, again, like, I don't think they're going to be having these long, drawn-out discussions, but I think the things they say and the way they behave during training this week, younger players are going to take notice.
Yeah, I think it's these guys know the cues of an MLS season, and in Austin it was guys like Ethan Finley, Max Cerruti, even Felipe Martins to an extent. When you're in a tough stretch, they know that that just happens in this league. Whereas in some other leagues that these guys are from, some other clubs that these guys are from, you might not be used to losing 3 games on the bounce or flying across country midweek, or all these things that they know how to prepare their bodies for because they've been doing it for 5-10 years. That makes a huge difference. I think it's really been big for both of these teams. I think we've talked about it throughout the season, but it's worth kind of looking back on it on decision day because of all those reasons that you just laid out. Yeah.
FC Dallas now plays Minnesota United on Monday night, 8:30 p.m. local time kickoff.
Hey, Monday night.
It's a rough one. I think
I wanted to get into. Do we want to get into the whole playoff scheduling
stuff
right now? Yeah, let's do it, because I think there's something looking forward to with this Dallas scheduling that I think that MLS maybe should have been looking out for too. You know what I'm talking about, John?
Potentially. Go on.
So if Austin and Dallas both win, I don't think that they can put that game on Thursday now because
it's on Sunday. It's announced. It's on Sunday.
Right. So it's on Sunday.
Sunday night, ESPN and ESPN2.
Right.
Or ESPN Deportes. ESPN and ESPN2 will only show it. You will watch this game. No, it's on ESPN and ESPN Deportes on Sunday night because the one seeds are in the Thursday games.
Which is going to be really interesting because there's the Formula One Grand Prix.
Yes.
in Austin.
Yes.
On Sunday.
I think
I don't know.
It's an 8 p.m.
less
start,
of a
right?
It's less of a fan. I think the fans are going to absolutely flock to
Yes.
to Q2, but the logistics of for Cap Metro and everybody else in the city, I think, is going to be sort of a nightmare.
I didn't think about public transit. That's a great one. And I'm usually a person that's thinking about public transit. What I was thinking about and what I wonder, and maybe our friends at MLS can let us know about this, is what the protocol is for getting hotels. Because I think, that for a team to be at a hotel, they're usually at not necessarily the fanciest hotels in the city, but generally quite nice hotels, and they have a block. I don't know if there's going to be those types of blocks of rooms unless MLS has planned ahead, and they've had for weeks and weeks and months. We already have this block for Austin's potential opponent in the conference semifinals. We can do some reporting on that during the week. I think that they've kind of made the best. I think they've kind of made the best of a situation that a lot of us were sort of circling, because with the game being, I believe it's an 8 p.m. start Central Time on Sunday, you're going to be sunburned, but you can go to the GP and you can go to the game. And ideally, there's enough kind of mesh time in between that perhaps the transit agencies, Uber drivers, whatever, can sort of have that turnaround. We are getting ahead of ourselves because Austin has to play this Sunday, fight a different logistical battle, I believe, with a pretty big concert in town. They play on Sunday against Real Salt Lake. Let's talk a little bit about timing before we transition into the Austin game. Chris, like Austin playing on Sunday, I guess it seems to be less of a factor. Q2 fans have shown that they're going to fill the stadium, whereas in Toyota Stadium in the past, like the last time Toyota Stadium hosted a playoff game, it was, to be honest, embarrassing. It was a half capacity, and not because of this was 2018. It wasn't COVID or something. It was that no one wanted to go to a game on Halloween night against the Portland Timbers, and FC Dallas lost that game. I mean, the atmosphere wasn't there. It felt bad, the vibes are rough and not spooky. It wasn't ooh, Halloween. It was just no one cares about this team because this game is on Halloween in Frisco, where a lot of the crowds are families. This time around, FCD, you can only control so much. You can only ask the league to do so much, and they were kind of between a rock and a hard place, where it's Monday night. It's obviously a school night. Who knows? We've never seen an MLS playoff game on Monday night before. The Sunday night football NFL game is the Dallas Cowboys against the Eagles. It's not in Arlington. So in theory, you could say, well, you're going to stay home and watch a game. You're going to come out to the stadium. But they've avoided scheduling against the Cowboys because Austin FC is in that slot.
Yeah, those are the kinds of scheduling things that, and Austin also had, I kind of thought they might put Austin on Monday night just because I think it's guaranteed to be a decent rating on TV. You're going to fill the stadium no matter what. The prices are through the roof. The demand is there for this match. It's the first playoff match at home, in history.
The first playoff match in Austin history, right?
Right, exactly. So I don't think you were worried about filling the stadium, but I do think that it's not going to take as much of the public consciousness as maybe it would if it was on Monday night, just because you've got Longhorn Saturday, ACL Sunday. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think that all that stuff is kind of
your point about hey, it's logistics. You got to figure it out. Is good because I think in a lot of ways it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right? If Dallas played on the Sunday night, it's in theory they should probably drive more people because it's a weekend. But then, people like me maybe are saying, well, how MLS, you forgot the Cowboys are playing, and then if they play on Monday night, it's well, the last time they played. I think there is some damned if you do, damned if you don't. You got to put these games in somewhere. And
there's also
people, you got to show up. You got to show up, fans. You got to show up.
Right.
It's the playoffs. I think FC Dallas fans will show up. I think they will. I think it's going to be a sellout because the marketing team has been marginally better than they've ever been this year. They've had more to market on, but I think that we've written some on the Striker about why. But I think it's the 9th sellout this year. Yesterday, that's a lot. I mean, for FCD, that's a lot, right? So. I think the fans will be there. And I also could see MLS saying, we know the TV rating for Austin will be good. We know people are excited for this game. Stick it on Sunday. Let's see if we can, get an enormous TV rating, and we'll punt a little bit, to use a football metaphor, on Monday. Before we get into the Austin game, let's talk about our sponsor. Yes, really, support for the Striker Texas MLS podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. It's 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Put them to the test if you're in Mozambique. Free worldwide shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com. if my math is correct, that's about 12 million balls, these 6 million men. Now,
There you go.
got to say, that's probably short because people have, if you had testicular cancer, something like that, obviously your friends in Austin, Lance Armstrong, that's not. So we might be cutting short there, but I don't know. They sent me the package, guys, the Performance Package 4.0. There's a lot inside. You got the Lawnmower 4.0 and the Weed Whacker. You know what the Weed Whacker is? You guys gotten this product yet?
I think there was one outside my door, but
okay. Oh yeah, that was what we heard earlier. It wasn't anyone mowing the lawn. It was someone taking care of their ear and nose hair. Yeah. So I thought, I was like, oh, Weed Whacker, it's going to be for something else. It's for ear and nose hair. There's also all sorts of other stuff: the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver Toner. They've got boxer briefs and a travel bag to get everything going there. It's cutting edge ceramic blade, reducing grooming accidents. This thing is waterproof. So you can obviously do it in the shower or the pool if you're a terrible, terrible neighbor, whatever you're into. Again, get 20% off free shipping with the code MLS at manscaped.com. 20% off at manscaped.com. Our code is MLS. If I am wrong about that code, I'm sorry. But I'm pretty sure it should work. If it doesn't, you can tweet at the Striker account. Don't tweet at us. Tweet at the Striker account. Again, manscaped.com, code MLS. Let's talk about Austin FC, Chris. Draw. Listen, like on the one hand, meh. On the other, like Austin FC 100% should have won this game. You should have been looking at more. And I'm not necessarily talking about, Big Rig wasn't good enough or Drewsy needed to finish more chances. I think they could have had not one, but 2 goals that didn't get counted.
I know.
But the referee said, not a goal. What happened?
I don't know what happened still. I mean, even though we did get the answers back from pro referees, I think it was the sort of canned responses that you get when they're like, oh crap, we screwed that up. I'm saying that, they judged the foul at the end. Sebastian Drussy's on a breakaway. I don't know if you saw this. Lalo Abubakar puts his body into him. I thought it could have been Doxo. I thought it could have been a red card on Lalo Abubakar. All of a sudden, then Colorado goes down, wins the corner. Lawless has the assist on the tying goal for Diego Rubio. So that was the one that really,
really for me, I thought. Well, because Drusy scores in minute 81 from the penalty spot, right? It's a clear penalty. Right. We all know it's a penalty.
That was the one that finally, because it looked like they had finally got the goal, right? They're going to get the 3 points.
You're saying you were like, justice is served.
Even after all these things, even after all these things that they had overcome, then that happens, and I think that's where the fans really, probably some of the loudest boos I've heard at Q2.
I'm not saying something for you because sometimes you go out on the concourse and everybody's like, "That's Chris Pillow." Yeah, but Drusy gets the obvious penalty, converts in minute 81, and then moments later, Fagundes has the ball in the back of the net, and the flag is up, and they don't go to VAR because I guess there was no angle where they could definitively say.
Yeah, they went to VAR, but they didn't have anything definitive, is what they said. So that there was no sufficient evidence is what they were looking for, and I've seen multiple angles. Yeah, I've seen multiple angles that look pretty sufficient to me. So. I
think the tighter one is the one in the first half where, again, Austin has the ball in the net and it goes to VAR and they call it offside.
And that was one of those weird ones, too, where it was such a long review that the goal had already been celebrated. The smoke's off. Everybody's happy.
Lights are out and away we go.
And then you've got everybody trying to explain to their parents and, children that no, actually it's 0-0.
You feel parents and children are the ones who are most confused by the celebration?
I don't know. I just throwing it out there. Or
I think children for sure. I think some
visiting ACL attendees, which I don't know why they were.
Hey, well, the Minister of Culture was in town.
He was, and how about that? He was, he was chilling with Anthony Precourt. Was up on the capo stand before that. I thought he might be, kind of sportsed out after being up in Dallas on Saturday for the Texas OU game. But I think that's a sign we're going to see more of the Minister of Culture heading into
He was like, I got to see someone score against one of my teams. At some point, someone has to score against one of my favorite teams. It almost
maybe that's what the refs were trying to give him.
Maybe, man. It almost didn't happen, but Colorado comes away with a point in this one again. Austin was already locked into the 2 seed. It seems like preparation for the playoffs is fine. what do you take from this game, Chris? And maybe more critically, look ahead to this RSL matchup against us. I said that FCD was hoping, I think, maybe, not the team necessarily. I think fans were hoping to see Minnesota United, because it seems like after that 6-game skid they had that they broke yesterday, that they're the team that just kind of is in free fall. RSL, not in free fall. They have been a team that's battled. They've been a team that's played well. Is there anything about this matchup that stands out to you as you start to analyze it? We'll have much more coverage this week on the Striker.
The first thing that stands out to me is the last time they played, Moussa Djite came off the bench and scored 3 goals. And he started on Sunday against Colorado. I think they wanted to give him some more minutes. He looked to me, he looked good. I don't know that means he starts over Maxi Urruti on Sunday, but that's something to think about. I think it's something to think about. I think that in general, what I saw from Austin in this match against Colorado, where you thought maybe they might throw caution to the wind and just go chase some goals and make it an open match to try and gain some confidence. I think they sort of took the opposite approach for that, where they were on the front foot, but they said, hey, let's stay on the front foot. Let's play with the ball, but let's make sure we don't get countered. And I thought that they did a really good job of that throughout the match. I think that's something that is a formula that they can take some confidence from. And like I said, I think that it was an overall good performance that just got kind of marred at the end by some poor refereeing decisions, and honestly kind of lights a fuse under this team that they should have already, because they've only won 1 of 7, and so 1 of their last 7. And so that's a bit of a concern, but the chances have been there the last 2 weeks. They just haven't finished them. And, to see the ball hit the back of the net a couple of times, even if they didn't count, I'm just not sure exactly how much confidence we're going to see from Austin FC coming out. But I think there's a couple of things that are interesting and positive out of these last couple of matches. One is that you've got a couple different looks you can throw at teams with Moussa Djite, Johan Valencia, the ability to close out a match. I think that he's looking, the best we've seen him. Moussa Djite is looking the best we've seen him. So the depth is growing for Austin at a time when a lot of teams, have had some injuries and are maybe not as deep as they could be. It's just like, what is the top end of Austin FC going to be? Is Sebastian Drusi going to be able to? And we had a chance to catch up with him after the match, so look for that stuff as well on the Striker. First time he's really talked to us after a match in quite a while. So
Mate con Chris.
Mate con Chris, yes. Yeah. And Arch Bell there, ton of Spanish-speaking reporters. I got a question in, so you can grade me on my Spanish, Victor, and we'll go from there. Actually, I think Arch complimented. I think it was maybe one of the better questions I've thrown out there. You kind of get put on the spot.
This might be behind the scenes, but one of the funniest. You sent me the clip where you asked about his groin.
Oh, sure.
English, but
right.
English is obviously Ingles.
Right.
And so he thought 100% that you were asking about his English. How is English? You asked him, how is your groin coming along? Like, ¿Cómo va su inglés? And he, of course, was like, oh, everyone always asks me about my English. And so he just answered about, like, I'm taking lessons or whatever. Like, I don't remember what the actual answer was, but
maybe
that was my favorite Chris Bill's Spanish moment of the year.
Right. Maybe if we already had the Manscaped partnership, he would have known I was asking about his groin.
Absolutely. Sebastian Drusi uses code MLS on Manscaped.com. Victor, when we talk about Austin, I mean, we've talked about the same things all year, right? We've talked about Driussi and overdependence on Driussi and the center backs. I think he looked really good from my perspective in this game against the Rapids. And the defense looked really good too. Like, no shame in, again, conceding this sort of weird goal late in the game against Diego Rubio, who was trying to set a record for Rapids goal scoring in the year. When I was up last week in Denver, people were really excited about that. I mean, what else do you have this year? To be honest, the team didn't make the playoffs. They were really good at home, but it just weren't good enough to get results. And I think, like, Rubio's individual brilliance, sure. I don't see anything in this game to sort of diminish Austin FC's reasons for enthusiasm heading into the playoffs. And in fact, I feel more confident about Austin after seeing this performance against Colorado Rapids as I did the week before when they lost to Vancouver, and the week before that when they drew against Nashville. Victor, as kind of the neutral observer, where do you see Austin, and do you think that one of these issues will dog them? Will they get past RSL? Where are they at?
Well, the thing is, I'm going to sound like Captain Obvious here a little bit, but we don't know how much this stretch is going to affect Austin until we see them, in their first playoff game, right? Lights are on, are they just going to flip the switch, or did they kind of, come in here with a bad little stretch, right? We've seen Drusi kind of fall a little bit into a shadow, right? Maybe trying to hold up some energy. But you talked about earlier, right? FC Dallas and the experienced players. I think those experienced players knew that MLS playoff time. You want to go in winning. You want to go in kind of on a little bit of a hot streak, and then kind of just set it off in the playoffs, because you get in that one game situation, you lose it, and guess what? That second place doesn't mean anything. It'll be a great accomplishment because of second year in the league and all that. But ultimately, it could be one and done, and that'll go back to this stretch, and it'll get picked apart, and maybe Drusy wasn't at his best, and the team wasn't kind of operating where they were earlier in the season. But again, I think we won't find out until we see them in that first playoff game.
I mean, there's two ways to look at this too, matchup-wise, is that RSL has played spoiler before, right? They definitely have that mentality under Pablo Mastroeni. But I think it's a good matchup for Austin FC, because I think they've seen success against this team recently at home, and it's not a team. It's not a team that has one killer that's going to come and wreck your day. And so I think
we saw playoff RSL last year with Mastroeni when they didn't have a shot on goal against Seattle and ended up getting out of there with the elimination, right? So
I think
if they come in and do that at Q2, I think that's kind of what you're a little bit afraid of. Can they pick them apart a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the confidence, the pressure, the first playoff game for the team, the sort of will this great season they've had all kind of go up in dust if they lose this first game. I do think the fact that they have that their one great result recently that you mentioned, Chris, the 1-7, is that right?
1-7, yeah.
It's against this team you're playing. I mean, I think that's actually like a quite sort of like big boost to talk about in the locker room, to bring up, to look at film, say, hey, listen, last time we smoked these guys, we just got to play our game. And I think people will believe that and buy into that, where maybe if it is, if it had been the Portland Timbers, if it were Nashville, if it were LA Galaxy, say, I don't know, these guys are kind of good, we haven't beat them. I think the fact that you look and you say, we just smoked these guys, is like actually a motivational tool that will land. You can play your game, you can play free, because we know that doing what we do, that playing our game, we beat these guys.
And that was the GTA hat-trick game, right?
Yes, the GTA hat-trick. Yeah, they really
Chris mentioned that like 5 minutes ago, Victor.
Yeah, they really like that. They really did like that matchup with them going 1-for-1. But the thing, that was also a rotated roster from Real Salt Lake, so it might be a little bit of a different look. Even if it is, though, I think physically, Austin knows that even if they don't bust the door down right out of the gates, which they've come close to doing in a lot of these matches, that's kind of the thing with an Austin FC performance, is if they don't bust the door down in the first 15 minutes, they kind of have to settle in and whether what the other team is going to bring. And if they don't do that, they know that they can bring Moussa Djite off the bench and that he's going to overwhelm these center backs. And I think that's a confidence boost as well, because this guy, I think, is looking good. And like I said, the depth of this team with Rigoni coming off the bench, I think Ethan Finley is probably the starter at this point on right wing. But you have more guys that you can kind of bring in and feel confident about than they have even at earlier points this season, where sure they were winning matches, but if they were down late, it was a little bit more of a question mark of who's going to change this match. I think they have some of these answers, and those answers have come because they've had these extra minutes to throw to these guys and get them in shape and get them worked into the group. So if you're looking for a positive and sort of a silver lining out of this recent stretch, I think that's a real thing. I think there's more guys. You might not have as much confidence in some of the stars, but you've got more confidence and more togetherness with guys lower down the roster. And I think that when you're talking about a long playoff run, which again, we don't know if they're going to be on, because you've got to win the first one to get to that. But I think that could serve them well if some of these games are tight and they need, some moments of brilliance from some guys that are unexpected.
You want to know another positive for FC Dallas and Austin?
They're in the playoffs?
2014 was the last time a Western Conference team that wasn't Seattle or Portland made it to the final.
Listen,
I think we're going to have that again.
Looking at the bracket last night and kind of, watching as goals were going in and saying, ooh, now FC Dallas would have to play. There was a moment where they were, I think, playing LA. And then you're saying, oh, boy, that's going to – it should be tough. It shouldn't be easy to win MLS Cup. It shouldn't be easy to win the Western Conference. And it's not going to be. We're going to have some great games. teams can absolutely lose in this round, but they also can win. We've seen how good Austin FC was this season. We've seen the potential and how good FC Dallas has been this season. And we're going to have it all covered at the Striker. Maybe we'll do another little show Thursday or Friday, or maybe a Twitter live. Stay tuned to the Striker News Twitter channel at the Striker News to see exactly what we're doing. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the Striker, what are you doing? TheStriker.com. Get subscribed. Not only do we have coverage of Austin, FC Dallas, the Houston Dynamo that will put up against anyone in the country. Not that it's like a angry competitive thing, but also LAFC, the LA Galaxy continue their playoff run, Atlanta United and the fallout there. Those are all Striker teams, as are NWSL clubs like the Houston Dash, Angel City, and San Diego Wave. Plus World Cup coming around the corner. We got some stuff cooking that I think you're gonna like there. Speaking of cooking, real quick, anybody, best thing you ate?
I'll give
another
quick shout out to home. I'll give another quick shout out. I know I mentioned it before. Kobo's Q out by the stadium. They had the farewell party for Glenn Nettie. So
we talked about it last week, but shout out again to the local broadcasters, a tifo, a two-pole banner for Mark Followell and Steve Davis here. The guys who I'm lucky enough to call friends as well as colleagues. A great job by the supporters, kind of acknowledging that. And it just seems like something is going to happen where these local voices will still be involved, but I'm not sure kind of what it's going to look like going forward. A little bit of a weird one for Austin, and there's Charlotte as well, right? It's like, hey, welcome to the league. Congrats, you're broadcasters. Never mind. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I think there's hope that some of those guys will be involved in what Apple's doing, but at the same time, it was kind of sad yesterday. To talk to those guys and know how much work they put in, and see them taking photos and sort of thanking everybody at the club and all that stuff. I think that Adrian Healy, Michael Lahoud, Sonny Guadarrama, Roger Valdivieso, we've all appreciated what you've given to the Austin FC experience. So congrats on a great run, and hopefully we'll see you do some more stuff. Even as soon as next season.
Yeah, whether it's the league, the clubs, Apple, some producer in some box somewhere. That's not meant to be rude to producers, but like no matter who it is, you got to find a way to keep these local voices involved, because I think there's so many stories that we're hearing this week, last week, about people who have that connection to their team in no small part thanks to the personality, the voice, the talent that these broadcasters bring. And we're lucky because, I got a tweet from a fan. I won't mention the team, but he said, not everyone likes their broadcasters, which is true. But I think in Texas, they're pretty universally beloved because they all do, from my perspective, a great job. And I'd be honest and say, I don't think Crew B is very good if I didn't think so, but I think they all do a great job. Hopefully we keep those local voices involved. Local soccer matters, and we believe that at the Striker. You can check out our stuff on thestriker.com until potentially later this week and definitely next week, when we're going to, I guess, wrap up Austin's game and preview FC Dallas's on Monday night. We'll get our timings figured out on at the Striker News. But until then, enjoy the site, enjoy the playoff feeling. Sorry, Dynamo fans, we didn't really get to your team today. 3-1. They lost. We didn't really mention that. Next week, we'll talk even less about the Houston Dynamo on the Striker MLS Podcast. Talk to you then.